Good morning. This is Liz Archuleta, Chair of the Board of Supervisors, and we are going to get started with our meeting this morning very shortly. If you'll just give us a couple of more minutes while we get everybody on this platform for the meeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. This is Eric Peterson, Public Affairs Director. We do realize some folks are having technical difficulties entering the Zoom platform, so we're just going to give it a few more minutes to make sure we get the supervisors and the management team on the line. Then the meeting will begin. So just please be patient. Thank you. Chairwoman Archuleta, if you are ready, we do have 3 board members in attendance.
Thank you very much. Great. Now that we have a quorum, we can get started. Thank you. This is the meeting of special session of the Coconino County Board of Supervisors, and I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you for attending. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Those who can stand, would you please do so and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This is a session, we are continuing a budget session that we had. We started it yesterday, and then we're continuing to today. But of course, prior to yesterday and today, we had a series of budget sessions over the past several months. And so I think we are in session now number 9, and I will turn it over to our county manager, Jimmy Jane, to introduce the topic this morning. Good morning, Jimmy.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board, and to all of you who are joining us this morning for the second day of our budget conversations in putting together our FY21 budget. I wanted to start by saying thank you for the rich conversation yesterday and the direction received from the board and giving us a clear path forward as we go into June 2nd for our tentative adoption again on June 2nd. The order of business today is we are going to start with the library district presentation, and I thank you for City and County Library District Director Jarek Tolman for being on with us today. And then we'll move on to the jail district. John Comer will present the 10-year plan, and Commander Figueroa is joining us for any questions. The sheriff may join us, but didn't have any firm plans to be with us for the jail district conversation. But thank Commander Figueroa for being with us. Then we'll move on to the Public Health Services District. Megan will present the 10-year plan, and Interim Director HHS Director Mike Oxtoby will be available to share a few words and answer questions. We'll move on to the Flood Control District, where Flood Control Administrator and DCM and Public Works Director Lucinda Adriani will present the plan. Jay Smith is also with us today, who will briefly speak about forest restoration efforts, including the importance of leveraging state and federal dollars for flood control efforts. Madam Chair, then we'll move on to mechanical services. Lucinda will offer a brief opening, and John Comer will present a mechanical services plan. Megan Cunningham will then present some information regarding an update on secure rural schools and transportation dollars. And then we will talk about next steps. So board members should have all received the information that we'll be reviewing today. Madam Chair, with that, I would turn the time over to Interim Finance Director Megan Cunningham to begin the conversations today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Megan?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get this started. Bear with me. Okay. Let me know when you can see the PowerPoint.
Megan, it is up. Just real quickly, Madam Chair and Megan, as you go through the presentations today, if there's anyone that is not a panelist that needs to be speaking, if you just let me know and I'll move them over when you need them if they're not already up.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. As County Manager Jane mentioned, today we're going to have a discussion on the library district, the jail district, public health services district, flood control district, mechanical services. We will then end things with a discussion on secure rural schools and roads. And then we'll talk about next steps. So for the County Library District, this is a repeat slide from what we talked about in our prior conversations, where looking at the value of a $300,000 home, the growth, it's now valued at $315,180. So a home valued at this amount would increase by $3.88. And this is keeping the tax rate the same at 2.2556. The total levy would be $4,932,375. So we do have a brief presentation that I can get up on the screen, and Jared from the Library District, the director, is here to speak to that. So let me get that presentation up.
Thank you, Megan. And let's see, we do just want to make sure that everybody knows that we have 4 members of the Board of Supervisors on right now, and Supervisor Parks will be joining us very shortly. And so welcome, Jared, from the libraries, the Coconino County City of Flagstaff Libraries, who's going to be reviewing the presentation with us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Megan, for being able to put up that presentation. So as I go through this presentation, I also have with me Amelia Madsen and Will Escarza from the Library District as well that can pipe in. I invite them at any time if they feel that I haven't fully discussed something or clearly explained it to go ahead and join in and share any additional things that they feel need to be added as we go through this presentation. So with that said, I'll go ahead and ask that we move to the next slide. So as you can see, this is kind of the levels of our different libraries and how they're functioning. You can see that at the bottom in green, our Flagstaff, Fredonia, Page, Sedonia, and Williams libraries are all doing very well. They're doing additional programming, things like that. Last year when we presented this, we had 3 libraries in the red section, the Detention Center, Tuba City, and the Bookmobile. With the annual growth that we see each year, we saw that the Bookmobile and Tuba City were able to move out of the red, and we're able to start providing some additional services that are much needed in the library system. But you can see there at the very top, the detention center is still in the red. It is barely getting by. It's actually not, it's spending more than the revenues that it receives can handle just to do the bare minimum of purchasing books and periodicals to provide to the inmates there. So I pull that out and mention that just so as we go through this, the rest of this discussion, you can kind of keep in mind where our branch libraries and affiliate libraries are as we continue this conversation, and the service that they are then providing to the communities they serve. Next slide, please. So this is our revenue comparison to base operations for our branch libraries. Each library currently is slightly going over what they have. You can see the shortfalls. Again, these shortfalls aren't accurate to date because we haven't had the final numbers come in. But for most operations, the revenue that we do receive is quite close to what we are then doing for personnel and for our operations. There's not much of a difference overall in when you look at the end budget of how much we've spent, how much we've received, and what the difference is. Again, to note that these numbers are not completely up to date because we haven't got the finalized numbers for that. Next slide, please. So for our revenue comparison to base operations, you can see that most of the library or the affiliate libraries in this category are receiving, or what they're receiving for their county revenues, for their base revenues, how much the cost is, and what personnel is in that what personnel operations are, as well as the operation of running those libraries. They all seem to be doing well and staying within their allotted numbers. Next slide, please. This is a little bit of a history of where we've been with the district revenues. So you can see shortly after the recession back in 2008, we started seeing a decline in sales or property tax, which started bringing the funds that the library was receiving below what our current operation needs were. At that time, the library decided to use its savings to fill in and make up the difference for what we needed to operate. If you look at this year compared to 2010, you can see we're roughly around what we were 10 years ago. The library has done a great job, I feel, in really looking at its operations and how we do things, and tried to change things and stretch those taxpayer dollars to really meet the needs of what we're providing to our communities, and being able to stretch those dollars to really fit in. And so again, when you look at where we were 10 years ago, we're at the same level as we were 10 years ago. Next year, we project to be we finally project to go above that. Again, with everything that's going on with COVID-19, we could easily see somewhat of a repeating trend financially, just depending on what happens, where, again, we might have to look at using savings to kind of help keep us afloat. Next slide, please. With that in mind of using our savings to help us stay afloat, this is the restricted funds that we were pulling from to keep ourselves afloat during that recession, and trying to keep services the same. As you can see, that dipping into our savings did take a great toll on our savings. And if everything that's going on with COVID-19 mirrors somewhat similar to what we saw back in 2008, some of the saving, there's not as much savings to help fill in the difference. Next slide, please. So currently you can see our fund balance for each one of our branch libraries. As I mentioned before, the detention center there's not enough funding going into that to keep it solvent. It's constantly in the red. We are pulling from our library district to make the difference just to keep it floating. The bookmobile, as I will mention for this, we are currently in the works of coming out with some other ideas of how can we cut down on the expenditures for it, prolong its lifespan. It's coming up towards the end of its lifespan for the mileage and the repairs that we've been putting to it. You can see that replacing the bookmobile would cost roughly around $350,000. Currently, the fund balance for the bookmobile is around 119. So we are looking at some other options of library services that we can put out in those far-reaching areas of the county to continue to serve those areas, and hopefully prolong the lifespan of the bookmobile until we can come up with a solvent solution that when that finally does break down, we have something in place that can still serve our community and that meet the needs of the county without possibly having to replace the bookmobile and spending that $350,000. For our Forest Lakes branch, you can see we have around $331,000 in that. Again, we're putting away funds into that fund balance, and hopefully are looking at land that could be purchased there, or a building that could be purchased, so that that building could eventually have its own building and its own operations. So we continue to put money away for that. For our Grand Canyon branch, we have around $270,000 in the fund balance, which we have set aside for expanding into the rest of the building that the library is in currently there in the Grand Canyon. Those funds will be used to renovate and expand into that back section. And so that is what's earmarked for those funds. We expect that renovation to be around $150,000. The Tuba City Library just currently went under renovation. We were able to make a bunch of improvements to that, which has left its fund balance a little lower than what we've seen in previous years. But we expect, as we continue to try and save some monies, be able to refurnish that fund balance. And lastly, the library district, you can see there's about $925,000. Again, if there is somewhat of a repeat of, not necessarily to say a recession, but if the economy is affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, we do expect that some of these funds will be used to kind of help keep us solvent, as well as use some of those funds to help, as I mentioned earlier, put in place some structure for what we're expecting when the bookmobile eventually gets on its last leg and does break down. We're going to be using some of those funds to help put that structure in place so that we don't have to necessarily look at purchasing a whole brand new vehicle for that. Next slide, please. So with everything that I've gone over so far, you can see that we haven't been asking for an increase, or we have not received an increase in a library tax district since 2014. We've been able to move monies around, stretch money, do things a little bit different to meet the needs of the library without adding that. As I'll get into the next slides here in a minute, one of the greatest aspects of during times like this is the time when we see libraries being used the most. As times get hard and money is tight, we see that more and more people come out to the library and use those programs and resources that the library provides. We saw that during the recession, and we've already seen a little bit of that in this first month of people really utilizing the resources more than they ever have. And so if there is a dip in our economy, it's not unlikely that we will see more people using the libraries, and yet funds for the libraries will probably also decrease. And so it may be in the near future that looking at a percentage increase is more likely. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, again, in 2008, when the recession hit, we saw a huge spike in our computer usage. For example, people were coming in and using those resources because they could not afford them at home. As time goes on and people start getting back to a healthy financial state, they are able to start purchasing the things that they want to do in their own home. And we saw a dip in that in our library. The use of computers alone kind of shows that people started getting smartphones and things like that, and it did decrease. But I think more than anything, our next slide really shows that trend. And so you can see at the beginning of the recession, there was a huge increase to library services. And again, as people started recovering from from 2008, being able to afford those things, that's when we start seeing the decline in library services, because people can start affording those and they don't come to the library as often. But again, as I've mentioned before, we've already seen percentage increases in the 24, 28 in our e-materials already, just in this first month, as people have really come back to the library because they're trying to save money. They're not sure what's going to happen to the economy, and we've already started seeing those increases. So with that said, I feel I heard someone try to ask a question. Was there a question that we need to answer there? If not, then that is the presentation that we've put together for the library district, to keep that in mind as we move forward with the budget, the county budget. That just keep in mind that we are expecting, with everything that is going on, we are expecting and starting to see an increase in library services. If revenues do decrease because of people owning homes here in the area, which some say are quite unlikely, we could see a demand in services, but yeah, decrease in revenues. And with that, I'll turn it back over.
Thank you very much, Jared. Let me see if there are any questions from the board about your presentation. Board members, any questions about the PowerPoint and the information that Mr. Tolman has presented? And just remember to unmute.
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Babbitt.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Babbitt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have questions on it. I just, appreciate the looking forward perspective that you're engaged in, and understand where you and we have some difficult decisions coming forward, especially around detention side. So just thanks for actually painting a pretty clear picture for me anyway of snapshot into the future. So thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other members of the board with questions or comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Fowler.
Yes, thank you. The library districts they are the central for the communities. So I just want to thank you for your presentation, and just really just wondering what are some of the new ways of doing business when social distancing is required, and somebody are we concerned about people touching books and then moving on, and what are some of the measures that are being taken for to keep everyone safe and the staff safe?
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Fowler. So currently, what most of our libraries in the county are doing is we have been offering a curbside service where patrons can go online, find the materials that they need, place a hold on those, and then later come to the libraries and pick those up without interacting with staff. They call, letting staff know that they're there. The staff get those materials ready, check them out to their account, leave it on a table, shut the door, and then the patron's able to come and pick up that material without actually interacting with staff. So recently, a radio show reached out and asked Flagstaff how they were doing their curbside delivery, and did a great presentation about what Flagstaff was doing, and praised us because ours was the only one they had heard that there was no interaction with staff. Currently, we are still having the materials that are being returned to the library. Staff use gloves and masks, obviously, when handling those returned items. And what they do is they quarantine that material for a period of time to allow any infection that might be on it to die off before it's actually put back in the collection or made available for others to put a hold or request on that material. So there is a quarantine aspect, and most of our libraries are doing that. There might Tuba City, I think, is the exception really to that, where there's such a huge outbreak. We really felt it for the safety of the staff and the community that we would probably not move forward with that at this time, just until they get a better control over the number of the spread there. Some of the other services that we're also providing at this time is we've been working on extending our Wi-Fi out into the parking lots. We have lots of people coming to the library and still accessing the library's Wi-Fi from their vehicles or outside the building to do homework and other necessities. So that's another great service that we're also providing. As I mentioned earlier, we've seen large increases to the amount of numbers that people are utilizing in our ebook and audiobook resources that are online. We currently also launched a new service called Hoopla, which patrons can log into that with their email account or with their library card and PIN number, and they can access ebooks, audiobooks, movies, TV shows, music, comic books, a wide variety of materials. That's been a huge success. We've launched that here in Flagstaff. Just this week, we launched it in Forest Lakes, and we're looking at possibly putting that in other areas of the county to provide just more service to people who are stuck at home and looking for things to do. The last thing that I'll mention is we've also been doing digital programming. For example, our story times, children would come to the libraries to learn early literacy aspects and hear a story. And because people cannot come to the library now, we're now recording those services and providing them online so that there's not a lull in that and parents can still utilize those resources. And we've moved that to most of our programming, all of our programming for the community, our book clubs, things like that. That's all online at this time that people can join in and participate that as we try to social distance and keep our staff and the community safe.
Anything else, Vice Chair Feller?
No, just, business, the way we do business now, from here on out, it's going to be very different. So just I think that just technology has become the way of doing business and that social distancing. So thank you for your presentation.
Great. Any other members of the board?
Just
Go ahead, Supervisor Ryan.
Yeah, just to add an appreciation for the outlook, repeating basically what Art said and Lena said. Really appreciate the work that the district's doing and how they're looking at this. And it's really actually, and you've done a great job of bringing it back around, and I like how you function. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you all. We're happy to be a part of this and show you where we're at and what we're doing.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jared. We appreciate the presentation and the discussion. Obviously, a very important role that the library district has in the services to Coconino County residents. And as you mentioned, it is times like this that people turn to the libraries for whether it's to use computers to seek jobs or to apply for services remotely, or whether it be to have families go to the library and check out books and take advantage of the programming at the library. It's important to have the libraries, and the library is also very important to our detention facility. And certainly we will keep in mind that there is obviously a funding issue there, a deficit there. And so look forward to seeing how that continues and what we might be able to do about it. What we might be able to do about it, obviously, this year is difficult year for everyone, but we definitely will keep an eye on that and look forward to talking to you at next budget cycle. And also just want to appreciate the rest of the folks that joined you for joining us this morning and for the very informative presentation. Thank you. Megan, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, County Manager Jane.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. I just wanted to, before we move back to Megan for the next item, I just wanted to say thank you to Jared and to the City County Library District team, to Will and the team there. With you guys stepped up. You all stepped up early on with the enhanced Wi-Fi that you mentioned, Jared, and again to serve communities throughout Coconino County. And appreciate your partnership with communities, and we will have some follow-up conversations on your funding issues, including the jail, and we'll figure that out. So I just wanted to say thank you, Jared, to you and the team for what you're doing to partner with people and communities throughout our county. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'll just mention one last thing, that really it's our staff and how much they care for our communities that really make this difference. They really go above and beyond. We had an incident just the other day where an elderly woman had showed up to the library hoping to get a book, didn't know our system, called in, found out how we were doing it on a day that the library was closed and we weren't doing service, but our staff went above and beyond and got her what she needed and helped her out even though we were closed. So they really just love this community and give all they can.
Okay, with that, we will move on to the jail district.
And Megan, just so I just want to let the board members know that Sheriff Driscoll is on the meeting platform, and he's here as well as members of his team to be able to engage in a discussion with the board. So I just wanted to welcome Sheriff Driscoll to the meeting. And
Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Madam Chair. The county jail district, just to give a little bit of a brief intro, and then I'll turn it over to John and sheriff's staff to go over the tenure. Just to note, we use the same recessionary sales tax projections as the general fund tenure plan. So the sales tax, the local sales tax that comes in to fund the jail district mirrors our projections for local sales tax in the general fund tenure plan. The one thing to note when you're looking at the tenure plan, and then they will highlight this, is that the jail district sales tax is set to sunset on June 30th of 2027. So that tax will no longer be at that time, be in place at that time. So with that being said, I will go ahead and turn this over to John Comer and those who are here to talk about the jail district tenure plan.
Thanks, Megan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Can I actually share my screen instead of yours for the tenure?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. Let me know when you can see it.
We can see it.
All right, great. Good morning, Chair Archuleta and members of the board. I'm John Comer, Senior Budget Analyst. I'm going to give a quick review of the jail district tenure plan. At any time, interrupt me for questions, but yeah, if Commander Figueroa or Sheriff Driscoll are on the line as well, they can probably answer questions better than I can. As Megan said, this tenure does share many of the same assumptions as the general fund tenure. It's using the same sales tax revenue projection, what we're currently calling the long recovery scenario. And that involves a drastic decline of 38% for FY20 for the remaining 3 months, and then a 6% decline for FY21, and then a slow recovery after that beginning in the second half of FY22, and weak recovery all the way into FY26. So it is it's a pretty drastic scenario. We do have assumptions down at the bottom. Some other ones that do follow the general fund tenure are the compensation assumptions that we made. As in the general fund tenure, we have no recurring compensation increases through FY24. And then FY25 and forward, we have 1% compensation increases. Also built into this 10-year plan as the general fund 10-year plan is the use of flexibility language. Obviously, it is being transferred out of the jail district instead of being transferred into the general fund. And you can see that's down at the bottom there at 1.25 million. If you'll recall, we transfer out 1.25 million, which is the most allowed by statute. 1 million is transferred into the general fund historically for buy down of PSPRS contributions. And the other 250,000 has been set aside historically for the sheriff to use for IT solutions. Okay, some other things to note on this 10-year plan are there are 3 different capital projects that you can see. The first one is a little harder to notice. It is the ongoing Page facility expansion. I think it has been budgeted for a couple of years now, so it is down at the bottom in the assumptions as a carryover. It initially started as a $3.5 million project, and the department is asking to carry over roughly $3.1 million of it. So that is the first capital project that's on here. And now we've also introduced 2 new sections of the 10-year for the other 2 major capital projects. The first you can see here, this is for the Flagstaff intake area, the redesign of that area. That is currently scheduled for FY22. And you can see here that it consists of roughly $5 million in capital. And then it does have some recurring costs because there are additional FTEs associated with this redesign. And there's operating costs in there as well. So you can see them occurring in FY20 and then moving all the way forward through the 10-year plan. And then finally is the Flagstaff jail expansion, which is scheduled for FY27. And that is a $10 million project. And it also has additional FTEs associated with it that would move forward. So that is a major expansion in expenses. As Megan said earlier, you can see on the 10-year plan that FY28 has $0 in sales tax revenue. The sales tax does sunset on June 30th of FY27, so there would be $0 of tax revenue in FY28. So of course that leads to a large deficit at the end of FY28 of more than $23 million. Obviously this isn't right around the corner, but this is probably, we do need to start considering future steps for the renewal of it, of the half-cent sales tax. So that's pretty much all I have as far as review of this 10-year plan, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Any questions of John and the 10-year plan? Okay, looks like not at this time. John, do you have anything else to present? Otherwise, I think I probably would like to turn it over to the sheriff.
Sounds good.
Okay,
I have nothing.
great. Thank you. Good morning, Sheriff Driscoll. Welcome to the meeting, and I just wanted to turn it over to you to see if you had any comments about the 10-year plan, about the jail district in general, or any information you'd like to share with us.
Okay, well, good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity to address the board, and I think to thank you as well. I know a lot of work has gone into this from you, as well as the manager's office and the finance people. And we've been very fortunate, I think, despite the dire times we are in, to see the work that you've done, I think has been very appropriate. And again, we appreciate that. Um, with respect to the jail district, I have our command staff here, Chief Axland, Commanders Figueroa from detention, and Commander Allen from our administrative services. So if there's any questions that are technical, they're here as well to assist. But I want to, I think, just briefly mention, over these past 20 some years, I think we've been very good stewards of the jail district funds. Well, we've enjoyed a great deal of progress. We've taken advantage of opportunities when they were there to construct new things, to develop programs, and to keep promises that we made back to our voters in the county concerning the promises to establish the in-custody drug and alcohol treatment program. We continue to enjoy great success with that. But I also want to mention, and it's Megan and John have both talked about it as well, as the sunset of the jail district tax. As we move ahead and as we make decisions about the use of those funds, I think we should call upon our history that we've made wise decisions. Sound fiscal management of the jail district funds. And in the future, to keep us in a good position to go back to our voters in 2026 and request an extension of the jail tax. You know, we have been good. I think both as the jail district managers that you are, as well as managing our jail operations here internally, I think we've all been very judicious about what we spend money and how we spend that money from the district. We've used our money very responsibly. And again, I think as we look into the future, we continue to do that. And again, lastly, I want to mention that we appreciate everything that you all have done and how we've been able to work together to provide for the needs within our detention facilities here in Coconino County. One last thing, though, I would also like to mention is that last year during the library district presentation, there was a concern about the funding deficit from detention. And at that time, we offered that opportunity to say, we'd love to sit down and discuss this and find out what's an appropriate funding from detention, from the jail district to the library district. We still want to provide that opportunity again. We feel it's only appropriate that we would pay our fair share from the jail district funds to the library district for that service they provide within the jail. So with that, again, thank you. And our staff is here to answer any questions, hopefully answer any questions that any of you would have.
Great, thank you very much, Sheriff. Let me see if there are any questions from any of the 5 board members for you. Questions or comments?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Supervisor Ryan.
So Sheriff Jim, you know, again, we appreciate the relationship as well with you. And, you know, obviously it's hard for everybody. You know, what do we do? How do we project for the future? Working together, it helps us project appropriately, be conservative, make wise decisions, as you noted. And, you know, hopefully we can take a look at this in the next year or two and hope for a good recovery. But we have a lot of opportunity, I think, as we step into the future, once we get beyond the current pandemic for what's happening. But again, it goes back to appreciating all our relationships that we have with which it makes it work. So I do thank you on that. At some point, I'd love to, you know, think about the capital piece. What are our opportunities? We're having a similar discussion, as I'm sure you know, with 4th Street. There, you know, is now the time, not now, immediate, but shortly after this, if there is other funding that we have the opportunity for, it could maybe move forward some of the visioning discussions and thinking from a jobs perspective of if we pursue capital. I don't think this is the year immediately that we need to respond to it, but we also need to be nimble. And so I would think that you've already been thinking in that way, but if not, did want to bring that up.
Thank you.
Other members of the board?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Parks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Sheriff Driscoll, did I hear that you are willing to share jail district funds to make sure that the library district can continue to provide for service to the jail? And would that be this year to cover the cost of the library there in the jail facility?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Parks, yes, I think we would be certainly willing to sit down and decide or determine what's the appropriate funding from the jail district commensurate to what services are provided by the library district to the detention office or detention services. And then we're able to do that this year. We would be glad to.
Great, Sheriff. Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Sheriff, for that. And so definitely, Jimmy will certainly, help make that connection with the library district. I'm sure you have that connection already, but just to keep us all in the loop, let's go ahead and do that and see how you might be able to assist. And I absolutely agree with you in terms of being, strong and responsible stewards of the jail district funding and of the taxpayers' confidence in the jail district. Been some amazing programs that have been developed, and look forward to the outlook in the future with some of these other capital needs being addressed, and certainly appreciate your partnership in terms of the overall budget of the county and assisting us as we've needed assistance with the flexibility language and us being able to utilize the funding for the county. So thank you for your partnership in that.
Madam Chair, I'm glad we're able to do that. So again, thank you all for your time, and appreciate all your efforts on this budget. Thanks. Great,
thank you. Okay, well, let's go back to Megan, and I think the next is it the flood control district, Megan?
We are actually going to the Public Health Services District.
Okay, and before we go to the Public Health Services District, would it be okay if we just took a 5-minute break? We're almost at it for an hour. So why don't we just take a quick 5-minute break, and then we will come back at 10:01. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much for that 5-minute recess. We are now back and we are going to be listening to a presentation on the Public Health Services District. Megan?
Okay. So what we're looking at with the Public Health Services District, and this again is information that we discussed with you previously, with the increase in assessed values, we are recommending that the levy or that the tax rate stay at the 0.2500. And so this would impact a homeowner with a property valued at $315,180 by $3.80 increase. So for fiscal year 21, recommending that the tax rate remains the same at 25 cents. The fiscal year 21 levy will be $4,824,310. When we start looking at the 10-year plan on the next slide, I'm going to just highlight some areas, but I just want to be sure that I come back to the fact that mandated cost projections that we do have on the 10-year plan are based on a 5-year trend. So we do have a rhyme or reason to why we are trending those the way that we are. So if you'll recall back in December, we brought to the board.
Megan, I'm sorry, can you go back to that slide again to show the trend again?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, super, thank you.
Okay. So in front of you is the 10-year plan. And like I was saying, as you will recall, we came back in December to the board and we brought this new format of the Public Health Services District. So for the top section, we show you the property tax revenue that comes in to fund the programs. We show program revenues, which are obviously the revenues that the programs bring in. We do have some additional program transfers in, and these are transferred in from the general fund. And these were High Country Humane transfers in to help with that operation. So you'll see we total the revenue programs, we reduce the program expenditures, and we have our surplus or deficit. So the takeaway from this section of the 10-year plan is that with the program revenues and with the property tax revenues, there is adequate funding to cover the programs that are run by the Public Health Services or by HHS that these funds are used for. So the one downfall from this is you'll see that next line where we have the Public Health Services indirects. So to just remind you that the indirects are costs paid to the general fund for the services that the county provides, internal services that the county provides to this district. So you will see that looking at fiscal year 21, we are estimating a surplus of $412,348. The PHS, the indirects are 1.1 million. At this time, the 412 will go towards those indirects, and then the general fund will not see the remaining balance of those indirects. So the revenues minus the expenditures does not leave the entire capacity to pay for the indirect services. The middle section of the Public Health Services District is the mandated expenditures. So this is where we don't the Public Health Services District doesn't necessarily have the funds from their services or from the property tax revenue to cover these costs that are mandated by the state. So when the district was formed, we had a required maintenance of effort. And over the years, we had put an escalator on that maintenance of effort. It was about 2% each year. And the thought process was that would kind of help with any increases in mandates. So we have recommended to go back in fiscal year 21 to the original maintenance of effort of the $3,739,233. So that maintenance of effort amount is the ongoing amount from the general fund into the Public Health Services District, and that's based on a statutory calculation. is what determined that amount. So you'll see the mandated expenditures. We have access contributions. We have access additional contributions. We have our all tax contribution. We have hospital charges and our Title 36 contract. The access contributions, yes.
I can just stop you just for a second because I want to ask this while you're on this discussion point. So the maintenance of effort, the general fund transfer in for financial sustainability, which is the maintenance of effort, correct? Or no? No, I'm sorry. This total general fund support is the maintenance of effort. Is that line item?
Total general fund support is the maintenance of effort. Plus, in prior years, we had, when we created the district on the assumption that our level of property tax coming in would be at this level. Then we hit the recession and that level fell way below that. So it was at the discretion of the board to, in a sense, make the property tax whole. So we provided an additional transfer into the Public Health Services District to make up the loss in property taxes.
Okay, and that would be the 4836 in FY19.
That would be, so that would be that you can see 3 lines on here. You have the general fund MOE. Then you have we called it the general fund loan to make up property taxes withheld, or to make property taxes whole. And then the 3rd line there is the general fund transfer in for financial stability. So these were instances where when we were in the midst of the budget process and we did have some capacity, we made one-time contributions into the Public Health Services District to help with the financial stability. So the MOE, the property tax assistance, and the financial stability equals the 4.8.
Okay.
If you're looking at fiscal year 19.
Yeah. Okay, great. So now just going to the general fund MOE, just that line across.
Yes.
So the 4252, and then now compare that to FY21, what's being recommended, the 3739.
Yes.
So that amount, I guess I'm trying to figure out like why the 4 million versus the 3. I'll just use the round numbers like that.
Okay, so the 4 million is an amount that was based on an escalator. And I want to say that, so at the very beginning of the district creation, the MOE was calculated at the 3.7 million.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say fiscal year 14, 15, looking at, after the recession, and it was, oh my gosh, we're not hitting those property taxes. What can we do? The board decided, well, let's put an escalator on that MOE. So for a number of years, there's been a 2% escalator. So each year that MOE amount went up higher and higher and higher.
Yes, I remember that now. Thank you.
Yes. So that's the 4.2. Well, our recommendation at this point is, rather than do this 2% escalator every year, let's just look at the true costs. Let's do the MOE, let's look at the true costs of the mandates, and then let's determine what amount of general fund needs to go into the Public Health Services District to pay these mandated costs.
Okay, got it.
So you will see for fiscal year 21, the only transfer in that we have into the Public Health Services District is the 3.7 million for the maintenance of effort. Going down to the mandated expenditures, access contribution, this contribution has been relatively flat for years. So we don't have, with the trend, we're just kind of showing it is flat. We don't have any indications that it will increase. Access additional contributions, we've seen a little bit of a up and down. There's been a year it's decreased. There's been a year it's gone up. It hasn't been a substantial increase or decrease. So using the 5-year trend, we have a growth rate of 1.5% for this expenditure. The all tax contribution. So this is our big one. And this stayed pretty steady for quite some time until now. And in fiscal year 21, we received information that for Coconino County, this will be increasing by 10.4%. And then in fiscal year 22, an additional 11%. Beyond that, we are unsure of what it's going to do. They didn't really give us any indication. And so we put in a 5% escalator each year after that. And that's going to be one of those factors that we've got to look at annually, and as information comes in, and change it as we can. But we felt comfortable with putting the 5% in for now, and that starts in fiscal year 23. So you will see that, just for comparison's sake, in fiscal year 19, the all text contribution was 1.9 million. And for fiscal year 21, we're budgeting 2.3 million. In fiscal year 22, it's going up to 2.6 million. So we are definitely seeing an increase in this mandated cost. For hospital charges, this also has been a rather steady mandated cost. We anywhere from 95,000 to 105. So we've kept that flat throughout the plan. The Title 36 contract, this also has fluctuated over the years, and in working with the Public Health Services District staff and looking at trends, we do have a 2% growth on this contract annually. And you will see in fiscal year 19, we were at 1.1 million. For fiscal year 20, we're estimating 1.4 million, and we budgeted 1.3 for fiscal year 21. So with the MOE being the funds coming in for the mandated expenditures, and then the cost of the mandated expenditures, we have a deficit of $1 million in fiscal year 21 that needs to be made up. So in looking at our beginning fund balance going into fiscal year 21, we are estimating to have a beginning fund balance of $486,708. So we will put that towards the 1.5 deficit, and the remaining deficit would be $400,953. And so that is the amount that is plugged into the general fund 10-year plan to be transferred into the Public Health Services District for fiscal year 21. And you will see that we follow that throughout. We look at what is the what are we budgeting for the MOE, which will always be the same at this point. What are the mandated costs? And then what is the surplus deficit? And what do we need from the general fund moving forward? Are there any questions on what I've covered or?
So I will start first and then I'll open it up to the rest of the board members. Can you tell me, in terms of the hospital charges under mandated expenditures, can you remind me what that includes, what that's for?
So the hospital charges, and there's a note at the bottom that says the hospital charges are paid to North Country Healthcare and Flagstaff Medical Center for the sexual assault forensics exams.
Ah, got it. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. I didn't see the footnote. So thank you for that. Okay. So out of the general fund, so the general fund support needed in 21, basically the 401,000, the 953, right? That then is in addition to the maintenance of effort of the 3739, right?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any questions from board members?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Sure, go
Excuse
ahead,
me.
Supervisor Rand.
Yeah, and you were asking some of the same questions I was thinking up there, and in following it. But a lot of that 400,000 is in supplement to most of the growth associated with the all tax in the Title 36, isn't it? We're pretty much looking at the mandated expenditures and absorbing that into the general fund is what we're looking at, isn't it?
That is correct. These amounts that we have for general fund support needed at the bottom of the 10-year plan for public health, those are funds that are going to help cover the mandated costs and any increases we're seeing.
Okay. And then when you laid it out, Megan, you did a good job of you know, I was thinking back to when we did this. I know if those within the health district were all excited that we were creating a health district, and at the time they were trying to develop a master plan, and we're getting all excited about all kinds of new programs they wanted to focus on. But we were looking at the broader county when we established the jail district, how to deal with the recession, the impact, and it was pretty much saving where we were holistically with what's happening. Also, a piece of that discussion was that's when we did put, and I was part of the big push on putting these mandated expenditures in there. There's a lot of assumption of we could build a lot of new programs while we had you know, escalation rates associated with costs in these programs that a lot of people were dismissing, and we needed to try and bring that back together. Of these are other mandates that we have that aren't fully exclusive. Now we've separated them because do they impact our current health district services? Not necessarily. They're more of a state formulaic mandate that we have to move forward with. The piece that I will just suggest, only so we keep it in mind, is we haven't been hit by the legislature yet, and their budget, it's not the typical pattern where they settle their budget and then we know what to do. So we still have the potential of eventually absorbing additional costs based on what the legislature does to us. So that's one that we just need to I'm just suggesting that we remind ourselves that we think about as we take a look at these budgets. I think that's all my questions or comments for now. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Megan.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Ryan. And Megan, it would be good at some point, I mean, if we could quantify the sum, I'm sure you have this, of the mandated expenditures and the increase that you've put in, you're saying the 10.4% increase, and then the 11% increase the following year. And then you
Yes.
program 5%. I mean, of course, that's just a placeholder. We don't know. It could go up, quite higher than that. But it would be good just to see if that, what that amounts to, every year, so that we can, because obviously the general fund is covering that. Just because, I mean, we have to pay that no matter what. I mean, obviously, right, that's an unfunded mandate that's been passed on to us. But it would be good to quantify the total amount of that.
That is correct. And yes, we can definitely provide that dollar amount in the future. To just kind of point out on the all tax contribution line, you'll see we're estimating fiscal year 20 being 2 million. Fiscal year 21 is 2.371 million. So you can already see there's 320,000 right there.
Right.
Of the 400,000 increases. So yes, we can definitely provide the dollar amount in the future so that you can see those increases versus what we're saying that the general fund needs to contribute.
Okay, super. Let me get other board members now. Supervisor Parks, it looks like you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do. I'm I'm looking at this, and Supervisor Ryan just mentioned the state throwing a monkey wrench in our works by not covering any of the mandated expenses and expecting us to cover them all. How much would it be possible for the state to hit us with that? Do we have an idea of that, Megan?
I do not have an idea of that, no. We feel that the 10.4% and 11% are pretty drastic. But I don't believe, and Eric Peterson would know this better, but I don't believe that there's been additional conversations on those being higher. But it could really be anything.
Maybe we could go to County Manager Jane to give us a sense of that. Jimmy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the discussion today. If I could take a step, and Megan, thank you for your explanation and for kind of this new version of this 10-year plan chart that you, as mentioned, we had shared with the board back in January, which, looking at all of the FY21 column, you have looking at the whole picture in really a truing up of you see that the health district secondary tax generates 412,000 more than operational expenditures. That is then used to help cover those mandated costs that are listed there, specifically in the middle of the sheet. If I can go back to the MOE, as Megan stated, the MOE is the statutory MOE. There was some additional revenue put into that, but our recommendation is to just simply, in truing this up, that is the MOE. And then that takes us down to, with the assumptions on the mandated expenditures, that takes us down to the net number that is needed in general fund support, not only looking at FY21, but looking out through FY28 with the assumptions for the mandated expenditures that Megan and the team have listed under the growth rate assumptions at the bottom. So one of the challenges, even in this FY21 budget, is those general fund support needed column there toward the bottom of the chart. Those were not included in the 10-year plan previously. So those have now been included in the general fund 10-year plan as anticipated expenditures that are needed moving forward that had not been acknowledged previously. Going to the Altex contribution rates, and I want to say thank you to Eric for helping to scrub this with the County Supervisors Association. These numbers are essentially the hit for FY21. It's a pretty large increase for 21 and 22. So those are numbers that we do have. You see that there are placeholders for 5% for the future, because we don't know what those numbers are going to be, but we know they are likely going to be going up as our population is aging. And we have already received our access contribution numbers for FY21. So the assumptions are based on what has already been passed by the legislature for a budget for FY21. Again, if assuming they don't go in and fix the FY21 budget at the state level for right now, this is the information that we have. Could they potentially come back this fall and modify the contribution rates for access and Altex for counties? They could, but we don't know, and we're not going to know that, at least based on the information we have, anytime soon. When they come back to fix the anticipated billion-ish dollar deficit, what are they going to use the rainy day fund for at the state level? And are they going to modify our contribution rates? But I guess I would just say that as Megan stated, staff has gone and looked at the historical access contribution rates, and they have been very flat. And that is the number they have given us for FY21. And we are acknowledging the Altex increase. So again, part of a continuing conversation and looking at this, we believe that this is a credible proposal based on the information that we have, understanding the legislature could change contribution rates in the future, but this is the information that we have right now. And if that happened, what that would require then is likely in the 22 number, an increased general fund support potentially to cover the state mandate increases should the legislature make additional changes to our formula. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and Jimmy, would you mind just, since the public is watching this, just describing what Altex is? Because we've been talking a lot about
Sure.
Altex and access. So if you could just describe that, that would be great.
Sure, and I'm sorry for speaking not clarifying. So Altex is the Arizona Long-Term Care System. So these are eligible residents of Coconino County that are in this system. This is largely speaking, not all, but largely elderly population that are in longer term care. And so based on an income criteria, they then qualify for All-Tex, and then there is a state county match for the number of enrollees that are in our county that are All-Tex eligible and in the Arizona long-term care system. The legislature did make some changes, and there is some increase in population. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there is some increase in population that is accounting for part of the 10.4% increase. But the legislature did give a statewide, this is not a local Flagstaff or Coconino County issue, statewide, the legislature did give an increase to the providers that are providing these services under a state Arizona long-term care contract. And so this is our portion of the increase that the legislature did give this year. And that was, that's why we have 2 years, because we know that there's a 2-year plan that the state has adopted with Arizona long-term care system providers. And so that's what you have. Access is our state Medicaid program, which is, the county and the state have we pay a portion of those that reside in Coconino County. We pay a portion of those expenses. Again, these are programs that the county has zero control over. We simply pay a portion of the service.
Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate that. So
Yeah,
let me go to members of the board. Supervisor Ryan?
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, and I wasn't suggesting that we needed to modify our budget this year, only looking at the dynamics that occur. These areas that we just talked about, the All-Tex access and Title 36 in particular, have had, well, access is flat right now, but we've had constant what is it? I guess pushes or advocacy elements of when the state gets short on their budget, there's a tendency to then go to local jurisdictions, counties in particular, and say, well, gee, we can't make up for it. So therefore the county, you need to make up for it. And so the point I was making is that there is a structural deficit at the state of that roughly $1 billion in the future that's out there that we have a potential getting impacted by having state mandates that then we have to come back and absorb it somehow. For as much as we plan our budget and try and handle the services we're covering, suddenly we have to absorb that deficit and respond to that. So that is sitting out there, and we have to wait and see what the state does. For now, the projections are, it seems like the state won't come back this year and modify budget. There's always a potential for a special session, but the likelihood is if that happens, it'll be next year. And this is where we start thinking about it now, looking at what the programs are, seeing what the state's deficit is, and we start to prepare our approach for next year. To see what we need to do with the County Supervisors Association or advocacy efforts to some degree, often in a defense of, we've programmed a really good budget, but please state, don't give us unfunded mandates where we can't absorb this. And then we educate the legislature. So didn't mean to be so long-winded. But that's kind of what I was looking at is next year, there's a potential hit. Where will it come? Traditionally, they go after transportation, but there are other areas like these line items that they also look at.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Other members of the board that have questions or comments at this time? Okay, Megan, anything else? Go ahead.
All right, so with that being said, we will move on to the flood control district. And just before I turn it over to Lucinda and her staff, just to kind of oh, I think Jimmy needs to say something.
Madam Chair, if I could just, if you don't mind, Michelle Axlin, the Assistant Director of Health and Human Services is on. Michelle, I didn't know if you had any final comments you'd like to share regarding the Public Health Services District before we move to flood control, if that's okay, Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you. I apologize for not recognizing that. Thank you.
No problem.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, and thank you, Jimmy. So this is Mike Oxtoby, Interim Director, HHS, Chief Health Officer, and yes, Michelle Axlin is with me. I would like to spend a few minutes just talking with the board about our integration efforts and the impact of COVID-19 on those efforts. So COVID-19 has certainly altered and delayed our integration, but it has also resulted in some consequences that we were not aware of. So let me give you some examples. Every one of our employees has asked how they can help. These were employees from 3 different departments who had very modest interactions in the past. They are now all serving on incident command teams and divisions and subunits, working and developing relationships that prior to COVID-19 they had never had before. And their response really speaks to the effort of wanting to be integrated and united as a single department. So it really was a pleasure to see that. We're also seeing line staff who had an opportunity to lead other groups of staff. So it allows those leaders to develop leadership skills, which will benefit that individual employee and the department and obviously the county as a whole. So those are some sort of unintended consequences of COVID-19. And then I want to share with you, when COVID-19 subsides, what does that mean for HHS? So we would continue to follow CDC and State Department of Health Services and county guidance. There will be an EOC and ICS operations. It will continue in some fashion. Not sure what the staffing pattern will look like, but it will be with us for the foreseeable future. Some of our programs could return to in-person services, while others would remain virtual if permitted by the board and our funding sources. So for example, our WIC program, Women, Infants, and Children, it's a nutrition education program, has been virtual since March. They have permission to remain virtual until the end of May. June 1st, we don't know what that direction is going to look like. We anticipate ongoing demand for rental and utility assistance, and Michelle's going to cover those numbers in just a few minutes. We're going to continue to work with the county task force and pursue funding opportunities. To date, our medical examiner's office has worked with Larry Henry on a Bureau of Justice grant application, and I think it's due in this week or early next week. And I think what we've all seen locally and nationally, and heck, internationally, is that public health infrastructure really needs some attention and some resources. At a federal level, you know, a local government can only do so much. We know that Arizona's support of local public health has been not as desired, but federally, we would look to the board to help us with federal advocacy efforts in that regard. And then finally, when a vaccine is available, our clinic will be ready and part of the provider network to vaccinate community members. We think that would be just an outstanding way to further help the community heal. And I do want to mention one thing. So last year in our budget presentations, we talked about county health rankings. And to refresh your memory, these are rankings that come out every March by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Last year, in 2019, we were ranked 10th. Happy to report this year in 2020, we moved up to number 9. It's an element of pride for us. We continue to strive and move further up that chain. But I would like Michelle to speak briefly about the impact of COVID-19 as it relates to community services. So, Michelle?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Michelle Axland. In the last 43 days, which seems like months ago, but in the last 43 days, we've helped 324 families with rental and utility assistance while receiving over 1,800 applications for assistance. Senior Services has prepared over 3,100 meals for Hotel Aspen residents and is feeding over 155 seniors 2 meals a day, 7 days a week. We're very grateful to Madam Chair and Lucinda for appearing yesterday before the City of Flagstaff City Council meeting, helping to recommend $164,000 for CDBG eviction and another $59,000 in general fund assistance for evictions for City of Flagstaff residents. We are hearing from the federal COVID dollars for eviction that LIHEAP and CSBG, Community Service Block Grant dollars, we should be receiving just under $500,000. That should be coming in the next 2 weeks. Arizona Department of Housing through the state for COVID dollars has given us $150,000 to date to help with eviction, and the FEP supplemental dollars will be receiving $325,000 to be helping with testing sites, COVID activities, and general response. So we are very grateful for everyone's help.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, and Jimmy and Megan, that's our brief overview and presentation. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mike, very much, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you very much, Michelle. Let me see if there are any questions from the board. Board members?
If I may, Madam Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Supervisor Ryan.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Mike and Michelle and everybody working on this. My gosh, you guys have been putting in incredible hours, working really hard on behalf of the community. And while I'll note that the money that you suggest is coming in, you know, my understanding is it's still not enough for what we need to do, but that we are getting money is really good. Mike, you know, it's good. I'm glad you brought up the integration component, and it's one that I'm hoping maybe in the future we have a discussion of how do we bring, so because the Public Health Services District is a independent tax, we present our budget with the Public Health Services District. I would like to see at some point a discussion with us on how we bring the three units together in terms of the comprehensive budget, because there's a cause and effect. You're going to have with integration different groups assisting, crossing over and integrating. It would be really good that to see budgets laid out that way. I'm not suggesting we need to do it immediately, but it makes perfect sense for where we're going. And you all may have already had these conversations, but it's just one for us to think about of, we asked for this integration. There's been a lot of great work moving up to it. We're interrupted by COVID. We have additional costs that we're going to have to continue to keep in mind, but just thoughts that I want to suggest associated with that. And my question, I guess, would be, have you moved forward in that way, or how are you thinking about that?
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Great question, and Madam Chair, members of the board. We actually have, before COVID-19, we were making progress on this, and it was going to be a part of our budget presentation, but of course that all has been we're on a different path now. So we would absolutely like to do a sort of a revisit with the board at some time in the future. But yes, we are on the same page as you are.
All right, thank you, and look forward to the conversations.
Thank you for your question.
Other members of the board with questions or comments?
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Supervisor Babbitt.
Yeah, just to follow up on Supervisor Ryan's comments, Mike, thanks for, just walking right in and leading through, this one for the the history books for sure. And, you know, and just bringing people with you. You know, the comments you made about the staff, the opportunity side of this challenge are just really well taken. You may have been on yesterday when we had some of those same conversations on the facility piece, which clearly relates to you. But just, you know, just can't tell you how appreciative I am and we are that, you know, when there was a little disruption, not only from this event, but as far as the management leadership, you just walked right in and have just done a great job. Your team is doing an awesome job. Marie has done a great job making sure that, you know, that there was not interruptions in how we approach this challenge. So I don't have many comments. I think all the budgetary pieces are thoughtful and make sense given where we are. And I just want to recognize your work and a lot of work that goes with you. So thanks.
Thank you, Supervisor Babbitt. Appreciate the kind, thoughtful words. Madam Chair, members of the board, it's an absolute privilege to work with the group I have. Michelle and the management team, Marie and Kim, Jimmy, it's awesome. So appreciate the opportunity.
Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Fowler.
Thank you. I just want to just add to the my appreciation to what the supervisors have just said. I think it's just amazing how you have just networked with all the partnering agencies and also tribes and helping, assisting with the state connection and even with the Indian Health Service. We're just reaching beyond our counties. The team that is that is really working on behalf of the communities just has gone out of their way to just absolutely explore what else can we do and how can we meet this challenge that we have. So I just want to thank you and the staff for that. I think the budget is well thought out and well outlined. I'm very happy that it's been adjusted also, and so it's a clearer budget. And I'd like to see at one point all of the team, all of the combination, the merge budget. I think that would be really good. And I just want to thank you all. And, you know, I would think that there would be a lot more rental assistance, but maybe it's just because of the funding that you don't have, that because of that, you can't give as much. Just wondering about utility assistance also. And these are county, these are for residents across the county. So I just want to just make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. This is Michelle. Yes, you are correct. Utility funding is definitely very low in our ability to assist individuals. We do sparse out utility funding for wood as well in our community, especially as we hit closer to the fall and winter weather. We are working with our local utility companies throughout the county to work on the moratorium that's currently issued and ensure that individuals don't get their bills so high once we come out of the moratorium that they can't pay them. So yes, you are quite correct. Thank you.
Supervisor Fowler, this is Mike, Madam Chair, members of the board. You brought up a really good point about one of the unintended consequences of this are all the partnerships that we've managed to either reinitiate or develop for the first time during this COVID-19. You know, I'm a liaison to tribes. I'm really proud of the tribes sort of looking to us for information and guidance and assistance and the mutual element of that. And the nonprofit world and the city and local governments and first responders and the national parks, people really understand what public health is all about. And unfortunately, it took a pandemic to get to that point, but I'm really proud of what this organization has done in connecting with others. So thank you for that reminder.
Thank you very much, Mike. Other members of the board? Okay, hearing no other members of the board, I'd like to turn it over to Jimmy Jane.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I just want to, Mike and Michelle, say thank you for your consistent leadership and working with, an integration that we're coming up on a year, but also in some pretty challenging times. And you both have, and the HHS team has really stood up to provide some incredible leadership and continuing to provide services. To the question about HHS integration, actually, Supervisor Ryan, you had mentioned this specifically. Maria and I actually had a conversation yesterday about a presentation to the board in the August-September timeframe, where we could spend some time and give an update on the integration. We'll have been just over a year at that point, and what it looks like, how it's worked, what it looks like moving forward. We'll also spend some time pulling apart some more of the financial synergy that you mentioned as well in that presentation. Again, that Marie and I talked about yesterday for some time after the summer. So that will be done. And I just want to say, again, thank you to Mike and Michelle and the HHS team for what you're doing to serve people and community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Jimmy. And yes, thank you. I'm loud and clear from all of us. Appreciate it very much. Megan?
Okay, before we move on, just a follow up to that conversation from the financial perspective. We have in finance been working with Michelle and Monita on a chart of accounts for HHS to financially merge all three departments, and that will be the way that they are budgeted for fiscal year 21. So from a financial and operational perspective, we are working on that merge at this time. Okay, so moving forward to flood control district, I will go ahead and turn the conversation over to Lucinda, and once she's ready for the 10-year plan, we'll have John Comer pull that up and share.
All right, good morning.
Good morning, Lucinda.
Madam Chair and Board of Directors of the Flood Control District, this is Lucinda Andriani. I'm the Flood Control District Administrator and Deputy County Manager. And this morning, we've just got a few highlights we'll touch on with the Flood Control District. I do have Jay Smith, who is our Forest Restoration Director, is also in the meeting, as is Christopher Tressler, our county engineer, and Jeremy Floyd, our administrative manager. So if you have any questions or seek any comments from them, I am going to ask Jay Smith to make a few comments when I complete my comments to update you on the progress with a very important efforts to leverage our funds with federal funds to be able to pursue more projects for forest restoration projects. So with that, as you can see on the screen, the flood control district assessed values have gone up. This is the values are a little different than some of the other secondary property tax based on the way that the district is laid out in the county. But you can see that the proposal is to not raise the rate. The recommendation and proposal is to have the rate remain at 0.2280. That would result, as a result of the valuation increase noted above, in a $3.46 increase in the tax to a property valued at $315,180. So, Megan, did you have a next slide there? Thank you. And so the tax rate remains again at 2280. The levy, the total levy for estimated for FY21 would be 3.8 million. The priorities for funding remain the same for fiscal year 21. A forest restoration and completion of the Mountain Dell project. As you are aware, you approved the construction contract last night. We appreciate that. We're excited to get that project started. We've secured all permits and we'll be moving forward. In fact, I think the contractor's going to be moving into the neighborhood to begin that project very shortly. Based on a conversation that was held with the cities and towns earlier this year, back on February 18th, there was a discussion about facilitating a conversation with the cities and towns about a potential future funding for partnership projects. And so we did go through the budget in addition to identifying some reductions, assuming that we may in the future see some reduction in property values resulting from the COVID pandemic. We did also identify some funds to support that, bringing in a facilitator and supporting that conversation. Let me just take a quick look. I'm going to switch over here to, I put together some other budget points here. I just wanted to make sure I cover everything. In terms of our operational, I did indicate that we have identified some reductions, cost reductions in anticipation of some future, as you're all aware that in terms of property taxes, they're about in 2 years in arrears in terms of the process. So even if property values go down in the next year, we typically don't see that immediately based upon the statutory process for setting property taxes. But in anticipation of potentially that, we have identified some reductions. We are maintaining a vacant position in community development, the hydrologist position, which is fully funded by the flood control district. That's approximately $70,000 with salary and EREs. And we are supporting that effort, working with community development through the provision of support with our public works engineer and training. Charlie Wilson has been assisting John Carr with responding to permit requests and that type of thing, and that's going really well. So, fortunately, we have someone in Charlie who's very dedicated and has some good experience in this arena. In addition to that, we are going to reduce the travel and training budget as well by about $700. Again, just in anticipation that we will see some reductions. In addition, we did identify just some general operating savings of about $18,000. So I want you to know that we're accounting for that in terms of the salaries paid from the flood control district. As with the general fund and our other funds, there will be no salary increase in 21 and 22. And then we would, in alignment with, again, the other funds, we would look at a one-time in 23 and 24. So as we move through the years and we work through the projects and make our investments, certainly we'll be watching what occurs with property taxes and working with the assessor so that we're prepared to address any issues in FY22. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jay Smith to make some brief comments and update you on the forest restoration efforts. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. This is Jay Smith, Forest Restoration Director.
Good morning, Jay.
Good morning. As Lucinda mentioned, forest restoration continues to be a priority for the flood control district. And we take this funding as our goal is to any dollar that's invested, that we look at the future risk management that as we're protecting communities and the county flood control district solvency, as well as the general fund. We saw that with the museum fire that, we had to reach into the general fund to look at a response for flooding. So we see the actions that we're taking, the treatments that were really not only protecting community, but protecting the solvency of our funds. So as we do that, I wanted to go over a couple things as we focus on leveraging our dollars with federal dollars, as Lucinda mentioned. You guys all know that we put in for this REPI grant, or the REPI challenge, through the Department of Defense. So the flood control district is investing a little over $1 million through, if we are successful and awarded the grant, between the REPI funds and the U.S. Forest Service, they would be putting in about $8.2 million. City of Flag about $4.5 million. National Forest Foundation about $300,000. Division of Forestry and Fire Management a little over $100,000. What this kind of equates to is that for a $14 million project that would treat about 8,800 acres, the county flood control district would have about 7% of that cost. The Forest Service and the REPI funds would cover about 57% of that cost. And then the City of Flag, through their FWPP program, would cover about 32% of the cost. So you can see we're really leveraging our funding to kind of kickstart some of these other agencies to help us get this forest restoration in some real critical areas, such as Mormon Mountain and around the NPOI facility on Anderson Mesa. So speaking of Mormon Mountain, that also leads us to the studies that we're still conducting. We have the LiDAR is completed. We're waiting on a few changes, a few things to come in. It should be getting mailed to us, the data, to where we can finalize the Mormon Mountain study and get a little bit better scientific evidence of understanding the watersheds there and where other acres may need to be treated in the future. And then we also have the Oak Creek Munns Park study that we will be beginning this next month and going into next year, where we're looking at a 143,000 acre watershed. It's 6 watersheds total that run down into the Oak Creek Munns Park area and into Sedona. We're going to run 5 scenarios over the entire watershed, but more importantly, we're going to look at 2 pilot areas of approximately 5 square miles each. And what we want to do through J.E. Fuller's help and assistance in their Flow 2D modeling is run fire through there with treatments and without treatments, so that we can start understanding on flat ground and on steep ground, where do we make the most impact, so that we can prioritize and really understand how we can make the biggest impact to post-wildfire flooding. So that is an ongoing study that will finish next year in FY21. And then lastly, the Bill Williams Mountain Forest Restoration Project continues to move forward. They will be coming back, Market Forestry, in the fall to finish up the Steep Slope 1 project. And the Forest Service is working now to identify and map a 200-acre parcel within the drainage that would be just to the northwest of where we completed the Steep Slope 1. And that's right above City Reservoir. So again, really a critical area that we want to protect. And with our funding and with federal funding and NFF, we feel very confident that we can put this 200 acres up for contract this fall with treatment, looking at either this fall or in the spring and summer of FY21, because this area will be outside of Mexican spotted owl packs. So we will not have the timing restrictions that we had in the original Steep Slope 1. This project also bounders or is adjacent to the Clover timber sale and to the Steep Slope 1 timber sale. So we're kind of tying a big chunk of area around Bill Williams Mountain together on that north side. So, which we all know is, really critical to protecting the city of Williams and the Northern Arizona economy. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Jay. Let me see if there's any questions from the board. Yes, Supervisor Abbott.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Jay. And it's good to see this the puzzle start getting put together over at Bill Williams Mountain. I do think it would be, we never circled back last fall. I would love to have a tour scheduled out there that kind of does the walk up from Clover to Steep Slope, say phase 1. I think we could do that safely with folks. I think, we didn't hit it last fall, I believe, or winter because of weather, but I think it's time. I think there is good momentum in that community. Supervisor Ryan can speak to it, but I think it'd be a great opportunity to keep building that, that license over there. I certainly like it. So just asking for that request. If it can come, that's one just comment. Question is, all our LiDAR has been open source to that whole crew. I know I referred the city to you, was looking for some hydrological data on that. Just want to make sure that's going out and all our industry partners know that they have access on the LiDAR piece. And then why don't you just let folks know the Fry, RFP closed, the RFP closed. Obviously, we don't know the details, but just let the board know, if you would, the path forward for September, I believe it is.
Sure thing. So yes.
Everybody just kind of check their mute button. Hold on one second, Jay. Everybody just check their mute and just double check that you're on mute. Okay, go ahead, Jay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Babbitt. Yeah, I think us getting that tour back together with local and with some of our state and federal delegations would be very wise to get that done and scheduled. I will work on that in the next few weeks to try to get something in everybody's schedules and figure out the scheduling. As far as the LiDAR, yes, it is all available once we receive it. We're still waiting on the final data. They had some glitches, some things they were trying to fix on the data. So as soon as we get that, yes, we'll kind of let everyone know that it's here and it's available. Not only the county data, but the Forest Service also acquired several thousand acres of data themselves. So it would all be available publicly, and we'll make those announcements to all. The Fry update is Tuesday was the date for the RFP to be submitted, and so it is closed, as Supervisor Babbitt mentioned. And also they are looking to now convene as a team with the 5 partners besides the Forest Service and look at the proposals, look at the bids. It is what's considered a negotiated bid, so they can, or negotiated contract, so they can then discuss with the bidders work from pricing and ways that the contract could look. So it takes several months for them to get through the process. They're hoping to have final decisions made by September, and understand that this could be anywhere from 1 contractor to upwards of 6 contractors that could be awarded. It's 1 contractor per unit, and they have 6 total units. So we could see 1 contractor or up to 6 contractors.
Great. And so thanks for that update. And then the last quick one is, can you give myself and the board update on air curtain burner and the Williams Industry Cluster and Perkins and where we are with that? Thanks. Thanks for all your work, Jay.
Sure. So the air curtain burner is currently out on James Perkins sawmill site. They had cleared some extra area to increase the capacity of their mill, and they had a lot of slash and stumps. And one of the things I wanted to see was how well it did with the stumps. So we have moved it out there. I checked on it Monday. It is out on their property, waiting for them to get their equipment there to start running that. And they probably will be there at least a month and a half to 2 months burning that material. But it will really open up their yard to give more room for logs for wintertime storage, so that they can continue to run throughout the winter at their sawmill. The cluster out there, Joe Dirt is still running his operation, his sawmill out there. which is a smaller scale, but keeps him moving forward with the contracts that he has with the Forest Service. And Good Earth Power, they have all their equipment on site now for their mill. There is discussion whether they're going to place that mill now at the site where they did the open house kind of ribbon cutting there on Garland Prairie, or whether they would move to another property in the Belmont area that they're looking at. So we're waiting to hear what their decision is, and they may be waiting on some of the RFP discussion before they make that decision. But we see that they're moving forward, and then TNC and Campbell Global are moving through Clover and Parks West. So they have 2 timber sales going at the moment. And, you know, we still continue to need industry to consume the wood, but they're finding ways to get rid of the wood and be able to move those task orders forward to get acres treated.
Thank you much. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Babbitt. Other members of the board?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I may, I'd love to.
Okay, sure.
All
Go
right.
ahead, Supervisor Rand.
Since we have Jay on right now, actually appreciate all the work that you've been doing together with everybody, Jay, but a lot of what you've laid out and spoken about, it's really neat to see different plans coming together and our different investment strategies where we're leveraging for more money. As we all did, you know, the board along with Jay, we went back to Washington to push further with these efforts. I'm curious to know the status. Do we have the opportunity of bringing extra money into these projects that we were talking about, the 2 million Bill Williams, the 2 million museum fire, Jay?
Are you talking about bringing more funding in through what avenue?
Yeah, actually, it was our advocacy of the end of year funding that we were trying to get. I didn't hear the result of that, if we were able to get that money to come in or not. And we were targeting about 2 million for Bill Williams. We were targeting 2 million for Mormon Mountain, and or whatever we could get at the end of the year money.
Yeah, I know where you're going now. Yeah, we did not, unless Madam Chair Archuleta has heard anything back from, she had written a letter to the Forest Service showing that we did have projects available for some funding that they were asking us about, and I have not heard anything back from that. As far as the other funding, I think with the COVID-19 pandemic, and the CARES Act, what we found was a document went around to each region from the Forest Service that was looking for projects to fund if they get the hundreds of millions of dollars that the Forest Service may get out of this stimulus package. And we were, so Aaron Green with the Division of Forestry and Fire Management reached out to myself to help prioritize projects that were shovel ready in Arizona and in our area. And obviously Bill Williams Mountain was at the top of that list for areas that we would like to see funding to come to. And so we're just now waiting. That went back to the Region 3 office, and we're now waiting to hear. The discussion was, are they going to fund a little bit of a whole lot of projects or put funding towards maybe 2 to 3 big projects? My advice and in agreement with Aaron Green in the state was that we would fund 2 to 3 big projects and really try to make some impact. And we had Bill Williams at the top of that.
All right.
So waiting to see now.
So we pretty much had a shift in prioritization at the federal level, but this was our latest opportunity while COVID's occurring with that. I do want to note that you're cleaning up the Bill Williams video right now that together with Supervisor Babbitt with Art. It looks like a really good tool, both from an education perspective as well as an advocacy opportunity with that. Just a couple other notes, noting that Fry is coming to finally they're going to award the contract. it'll be interesting to see what opportunities we have either in parallel with that or for what we're doing. So I'd be curious in the future to see how that plays out. Appreciate all your work on the grants that are moving forward. Just another piece of note, just an aside, community cleanups started in the West, the Western communities, and they're going to be moving to the this central area pretty soon. Moonset Pit has filled up already. So because of COVID, they're not going to burn, so they have an alternative pit available. But all our efforts moving forward on this forest mitigation efforts have been it's really coming together, and a lot of it I credit to everybody, but to your work that you've been doing, Jay, and again, appreciate all the board members, but Supervisor Babbitt especially on what everybody's been doing with this. Just one other note on Lucinda with the Mountaindale project. The trucks are beeping outside as we speak. If anybody has little kids that want to see big tractors, and even you big kids, Mountaindale is the place to come for next month or so to watch them. But I'll keep it at that. I really like the budget on how it's set up. I look forward to future conversations with the other municipalities, as well as, hopefully we can be successful with some of these grants as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. And I know that Lucinda still has some points that she needs to go through in terms of the 10-year plan, the budget. And so why don't we, Jay, if you're done, why don't we turn over to Lucinda to finish this out, and then I can catch other board members that might have questions overall. Lucinda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out a couple of items on the 10-year plan. You'll note there that toward the top, there's a line item listed as miscellaneous state revenue. Those are actually the reimbursements for both North Schultz flood repairs that were conducted last summer, as well as the museum flood response from last summer. And in FY 2020, we had budgeted $777,000 as reimbursement for the North Schultz flood repairs. We did get input this morning from DEMA, from the state, that process, they've completed the processing of that request for reimbursement, and it's gone to the audit group. I've been in communication with the director, Anthony Cox, and ask him to continue to, even though we know how busy they are right now, to continue to try to move that forward so that we could secure those funds in this fiscal year. I think there's still a reasonable chance that we will, given that they've completed the processing. And then we show in fiscal year 2021, the $435,000, that is for the reimbursement for museum flood preparation from last summer. So, and that is, we've submitted our materials and they are going through the processing of those requests for reimbursement now. So, and then John, if you could scroll down a little bit there toward the bottom, I just wanted to point out, just keep going, that, and we had discussed this prior, we have a emergency reserve that we maintain, that we initiated 2 years ago. I think this is the actual second year now. And you'll note that the emergency reserve within the flood control district funds. In addition to that, just below that, you'll see museum flood emergency reserve. As you recall, we'd had this discussion and direction from the board prior. There was $285,000 remaining from a transfer that was made from the emergency fund, the general fund emergency reserve, last year to the flood control district to support the response efforts for the museum flood issue. And we expended approximately 1.2 million of those funds, so that 285,000 is what's remaining. And we are continuing to propose that those funds remain in this reserve, and that we show them expended in 21. Obviously, that will be a result of whatever flood events we have within the museum flood area. So if we don't have any flood events that we need to respond to, or just let's say minor events, we will transfer that money into the next year. So in effect, every year, any money that's remaining would get transferred to the next year to assist with response to museums. So, and on that note, we are working to prepare the neighborhoods, both within Flagstaff and outside of Flagstaff, Mount Eldon Estates, for potential flood events this year. As everyone knows, we really didn't have a monsoon last year. We're anticipating a normal monsoon this year. And so we'll be undergoing those preparation efforts, also putting together a flood response plan, working closely with the city of Flagstaff. So with that, Madam Chair, we are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. Let me open it up to the board members for any questions that they might have. Okay, well, hearing none at this time, then
Madam Chair?
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple. Lucinda, could we go back to the top of the spreadsheet chart there?
You bet.
Okay. My first question is, I see 0.2280 going along there from year to year, starting this year and from there on. Is that an increase, or is that the rate that would stay static?
We are showing that the rate remains static. As the board's aware, that any given year, the board of directors of the flood control district can make a decision whether they want to choose to raise the rate or lower the rate or keep the rate the same. So our projection shows that it remains the same throughout the 10-year.
Great, thank you. The other question I had was on the 435,000 there in the red. Is that, even though we did not have a flood last year, is that reimbursable by the federal government?
The indications that we've had to date is that a good chunk of those expenditures will be reimbursable, but they're going through that process now. So we haven't gotten a definitive answer, but they certainly encouraged us to submit those expenditures, and we're working with them during their review process.
All right, thank you, Lucinda.
Thank you.
Other members of the board with questions or comments? All right, thank you,
Lucinda?
Lucinda. Oh, go ahead, Supervisor Babbitt.
Yeah, no, I just want to, you finish with museum fire, post-fire, flood prep. Folks are, I was up on the burn area yesterday with some residents and taking folks up there and doing some field trips up there. So it's really an important piece of how we communicate that reality, I think, are these trips. And so I would like to just keep coordinating with you to make sure people are place a look at rock weir or cross vein or any of these things with a picture when you see the drainage. And so I still think there are good opportunities for that. Just really appreciate all the work that's gone on to get Tiffany in and out. They did a great job. Alan was awesome up there. So thanks for your work and your staff's work on that.
Thank you. And we are working to complete the Wild Rose Basins clean out project, as you know, and I think we expect that to be done within the next week. So that's a second project that's underway currently.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Babbitt, your audio was a little bit, went like a little low at one point. We could still hear you, but just so you know, it went just a little bit inaudible almost, but we could still hear you. It was just really light. Okay, great. Any other board members that wish to ask a question or comment? All right, great. Lucinda, anything else on this?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate that.
Great. Okay, Megan, going back to you. We're going to now discuss mechanical services.
Yes, thank you. So I'm trying to get my views up. Sorry about that. So in looking at mechanical services, I'm going to turn this over to John. The first slide talks about the rate structure, and then John will pull up the 10-year plan for discussion.
Sorry, Lucinda, did you have any opening comments before I talk?
Thank you, John. Just to share with the board that with mechanical services, as I think certainly you understand, but for the benefit of anyone in the public that might be participating today, this is an internal service organization or effort. Mechanical services is the provision of vehicles and services to the entire county, not just to Public Works, but to the entire county. This organization, this effort maintains, for example, the sheriff's deputies' vehicles, as well as all the rest of the vehicles that are used by county employees during their course of business, field inspectors, building inspectors, those types of things. So this is the service. It is in effect an internal fund, and the internal departments pay a cost, which John will go through the actual breakdown of those costs. And for the services to operate vehicles, we provide the fuel for those, the vast majority of the fuel for those vehicles, as well as the maintenance services as well. Going forward with mechanical services, obviously the situation that we're in now is going to warrant sharpening the pencil. And we will be doing that over the next couple of months. I'll say that one of the benefits we're getting right now from COVID is that, in effect, we have a natural hedge when the economy is down. Typically, diesel and gasoline prices go down, and we've seen a pretty substantial reduction. And so we will see a reduction in costs relative to fuel costs within the fund forever, however long that remains at a lower cost. And we buy in bulk, so we pay quite a bit less than what you see at the pump right now, even though that price has gone down as well. So with that, I'll turn that over to John Comer to go through the details. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Lucinda. Hello again, Chair Archuleta, members of the board. This is John Comer. I guess maybe some background first about the 10-year rate plan. One of the consequences of the Great Recession was difficulty keeping the mechanical services fund sustainable, with less vehicles being replaced and being worked on by the department. This fund was in danger of being unsustainable. So in response, the department instituted a rate increase plan in FY18, which is what you see in front of you. And really, the goal here was twofold. Obviously, to increase revenue into the mechanical services fund, but secondly, and just as important, is probably to do it as gradually as possible so that it didn't put undue pressure on departments, because they're essentially the ones who are paying into this fund. So you can see the rate plan started in FY18, and we are recommending that we continue it through into the FY21 plan here. You can see that there are some increases to certain services that will be passed to departments. We're keeping, let's see here, maintenance and repair of the hourly labor rate exactly the same as this year at $85 an hour. And then we recommend that we increase the fuel overhead rate from 14% to 16%. We're also recommending that we increase the administrative fee. That is the annual fee that is paid for each vehicle that is within the service plan, from $520 a year to $540. And then the parts overhead rate would also increase 1% from 30%, or from 29% to 30%. And then you can see lastly that the motor pool daily rental fee would stay the same. So that's basically what the rate plan would look like. I think let's move to the 10-year plan next and we can see what the effects are. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, this 10-year, all right, great, thank you. This 10-year plan is laid out a little differently than all the others that we work with. This one is really divided into separate divisions, and this is really in order for the department to get a better handle on the revenues and expenses from each division. But some of the important parts of it are, and amazingly enough, the most important part is in the smallest font, so sorry about that. But you can see this percent recovery rate. That is how much of our operational expenses we are recovering through revenue coming from departments. Obviously, we're aiming for 100% or slightly over that. You can see actual FY19, we did actually reach 101% due to some due to some savings. We're budgeted FY21 to be at 98%. And this, of course, is because we don't want to increase these rates that affect departments too quickly. But you can see moving forward that our goal is to reach 100% and even slightly above it. So that's really the percent recovery. This whole top portion is really about operations, about the maintenance of the vehicles, et cetera, while the lower portion, which I won't get into too much today, but that's really about vehicle replacement and how vehicles move through the replacement plan. But I guess obviously most importantly is that ending fund balance. You can see we're ending FY20, expected to end FY20 with around $431,000. So we are keeping on at a pretty slim margin here, not a whole lot of capacity. You can see it dips a little bit farther going forward, but then it does start to increase and become a little more healthy near the end of the plan. If that does turn out to be the case, I'm sure the department would try to relax their rate increases accordingly, just to keep this fund balance from really affecting departments too much. But also, I think we're just kind of starting to wrap our head around what kind of affects the current recession and kind of more importantly, like the changing ways we might be doing business could affect this fund and could affect mechanical services. So that's something that we're going to be keeping an eye on going forward. That's really all I have to show with the 10-year plan. Lucinda, if you have anything to add or if there are any questions.
Thank you, John. I just do want to add that prior to the outbreak of COVID, we had a presentation to the board regarding the integrating additional electric vehicles into our fleet. And the current plan is to continue to move forward with that. I think, as you're aware, we have received a notification from APS that they will be installing a electric charging station at our King Street facility at Health and Human Services. And our intention right now is to purchase a minimum of 2 electric vehicles that can utilize that station and be utilized by HHS and potentially other departments as well. And then we'll continue to look at other opportunities with the replacement plan to continue to move our fleet toward electric vehicles. So we will continue with that process. And continue to have those conversations with the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucinda. Thank you, John. Anything else to add before I open it up to the board for questions?
Nothing for me.
Okay. No, we're good. I'm going to
Good.
open it up to the board now for questions then. Board members, any questions of Lucinda or of John on any of the figures or what he presented in the spreadsheet?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Go ahead, Supervisor Ryan.
So, yeah, I'm curious to see how the dynamics play out associated with the modified effect of COVID-19 without being foolish. Well, first and foremost, we want to be conservative and, know that we have the appropriate revenues that are there, but without being foolish, I'd be curious to see what our opportunities might be also. Sometimes it might, seem to be counterintuitive, but, our buying power gets modified also. And so these are pieces that, I don't think we have, we might not be ready for immediately, but I'd be curious to see what your explorations of these concepts might be.
In terms of identifying opportunities to purchase vehicles at lower cost, is that what you're suggesting, Supervisor Ryan?
Yeah, actually, since we're on this particular topic here, yes, that was one piece. Whether it's, vehicles right now, there's pretty much a real challenge associated with the auto industry, as well as other mechanical opportunities there. Is there a chance that maybe we pick up an extra grader or an extra vehicle just because our buying power has improved? Or I'm being very simplistic in my statement with it, but there are broader pieces. I know our fuels contract is a little bit more complicated, and we don't necessarily have, I don't think we have much more storage capacity associated with that, but it's that type of exploration of, times are down, and yet there are opportunities also associated with that.
Certainly there are, and I think you're correct that we have seen some opportunities during past downturns. Although I will say during this situation, there's been some level of counterbalancing effect with the issues of trade with China and impact on materials that are used to make both vehicles and equipment. Just want to point out that for mechanical services, the public works equipment is not incorporated into this plan. Public Works purchases the equipment through the Public Works Transportation Fund budget. So just so we understand that, but in that budget as well, we're looking at, we will certainly be looking for opportunities to take advantage of any reductions in costs that are afforded to us. We work to purchase vehicles. We work through the state contract. That historically has provided the lowest, by far the lowest cost options. The entities, the dealers that provide vehicles to state, county, city organizations, not all dealers do. It's quite a process. They have to have enough capitalization to cover the upfront costs, the way those procurements take place. And so, unfortunately, we don't see local dealers participating in that program. The resulting cost savings that come from the state are substantial. So anyway, we may see some changes in that. Who knows where this market is going? I will tell you that I've been I've got a vehicle that's going to need to be replaced in the next year or so, and I've kind of been watching what they're doing with with the vehicle prices, and and financing. And frankly, I haven't seen much softening yet, so we'll see what happens. But certainly, our team puts a lot of effort into that process. So, and we will continue to do so.
And I was just being pretty simplistic in my, my suggestions of where it, what the opportunities were, but it was more of the exploration of opportunity. We found unique circumstances, as you noted, Lucinda, in past downturns. It's an area to pause, but not be foolish, but see what we might have available. And that's what I was suggesting. It'd be interesting to see what might be out there. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Okay, no other questions from board members? All right, Lucinda, anything else to close this out with?
No, I'm done, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And thank you, John.
Okay. Thank you, John. Back to Megan, secure rural schools.
Okay, yes, we are back, and our next topic is secure rural schools and roads. So in one of our previous conversations, we had brought to you the fiscal year 21 funding that's available from schools and roads. And to just kind of reiterate, so we will receive this funding before the end of fiscal year 20. And that allocation will come to the board for your approval. And the schools and roads portion will be distributed to the schools and roads at the end of fiscal year 20 as far as timing goes. For the Title III and the Title III funds that we do get for certain purposes, those are programmed in the fiscal year 21 budget due to timing. There isn't time to spend those from the time we receive the money until we can actually expend it. So what we're looking at for fiscal year 21 funding, fiscal year 2021 funding, we're receiving approximately the estimate is $2.5 million. 8% of this goes to Title II, 7% of it goes to Title III. So just to kind of give a history of the 8 and 7%. So when Secure Rural Schools was an annual thing before it was discontinued, and then we had to work on authorizations, the process was for the board to actually designate I'm trying to think of the word, but designate how much would go to Title II and how much would go to Title III. And we would report this designation to the treasurer. Well, we were able to do that annually when funding was not reauthorized, and then kind of last minute it was, yes, we're going to reauthorize this. The direction that we were given was, we're not allowing for that designation. You are just going to use the last designation that you had. And that's kind of been the case moving forward. So I don't want to say we're stuck with this designation, but we have not had the opportunity to change it. So 8% will go straight to Title II, which is the Resource Advisory Committee, and that's $206,038. 7% is what will go to our Title III projects, which we'll talk about on the next slide, and that's $180,283. And that leaves a balance of 85% of the funds for $2.1 million, and that's what's considered Title I. Title I distribution, we have $500,000 set aside off the top for Superintendent of Schools office funding. If this funding were not paid out of Secure Rural Schools and Roads funding, it would have to come directly from the general fund. So this is offsetting general funding. The remaining balance is split between roads and schools. And previous years, and when I say previous years, this is before Prop 403, the road maintenance sales tax, this distribution used to be 50% to roads and 50% to schools. When the road maintenance sales tax passed and became collectible, this distribution was changed to 25% roads and 75% schools. And that is the recommended breakdown for the fiscal year 2021 distribution. So that means 422,000 would go to roads and the 1.2 million would go to schools. And then that would then be distributed out to the schools based on a calculation that the superintendent of schools does that takes into account enrollment and things like that. And we bring that distribution back to the board prior to it being actually distributed out. So the total Title I distribution would be $2,189,150. So the next slide talks about the Title III allocation summary. And this is, there are a number of different types of things, and we've talked about this, that these funds can go towards, and what we have that adequately fits the requirements is Flagstaff Patrol. So this would cover estimated costs of sheriff patrol on federal lands. And then search and rescue. This covers estimated cost of search and rescue operations on federal lands. This, so 86,536 would go towards patrol and 93,747 would go towards search and rescue. And again, these dollars offset general fund dollars that would go towards these services. So the 180,283 will offset general fund expenditures. So that's what I have for secure rural schools. And I believe we just want to confirm that we do want to continue with the 25% to roads and the 75% to schools, and that these the Title III dollars will go towards Flagstaff Patrol and search and rescue. Once we have the board's direction on that, we do have to post the Title III dollars for a 45-day comment period. And then we bring it back for a final authorization from the board with a public hearing.
Thank you very much, Megan. Let me see if there's any questions about the secure rural schools allocations. Members of the board, any comments on this? Supervisor Ryan?
Madam Chair, just quickly, I'm okay. I think we have the funds targeted really well right now. Obviously, school superintendent's office, very important allocation that we carry forward with that. And then the additional pieces going out to schools where the needs are. Just a reminder of, we shifted the proportion to be higher for the schools. It's not a guarantee that it will always stay there. As we saw historically, we really needed it for roads before, when schools were getting a lion's share of it and we had to readjust it. Right now for where we are, I think our priorities are really good. Looking at Title III, we see the impact to the sheriff's office for the sake of search and rescue. It does make sense that we use this as a target to help out on those federal lands in particular, but how much it really is needed here. And we do know it doesn't fully cover the costs of search and rescue on that. So I'm okay with how we're designating where they are, and it makes sense if we get this set in place that we can go out and finish off the process as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other members of the board that wish to comment on this item?
Madam Chair, this is Supervisor Fowler.
Yes, go ahead.
I too am, I think this is a good use. I think that we have it well figured out that these are the proper places to expenses where we need to make sure that these dollars are kept in for these uses. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we know, Secure Rural Schools, the Secure Rural Schools Community Self-Determination Act is always on the chopping block. It has actually had literally 9 lives in terms of getting it reauthorized. And so it is never certain that
I would say 24 lives,
Congress
Madam
will-
Chair. I would say 24
Yeah,
lives.
you're right about 24 lives. Yes, it's never certain that Congress will reauthorize this act, and so obviously, as long as we can continue to have it and advocate for it, and have Congress responsive to it, we want to do everything we can to keep it. But again, this is not guaranteed. Luckily, we still have this funding, but just wanted to state that. I know everybody knows it, but just for members of the public, that if this funding does not get reauthorized, then of course these activities will be at risk. Megan, anything else?
Sorry, I was on mute. Not on Secure Rural Schools, no. So if we are done with that, we can move forward to the next steps.
Yes, great. And we're going to try to wrap this up by noon, just because, well, we're there at that point. And also, I know that we have the cities and towns call at noon. So if we can join that around that time or shortly after, that would be great. Megan?
Okay, so next steps, with all of the decisions and the direction that we've received between yesterday and today and all of our previous conversations, June 2nd, staff will be bringing the fiscal year 21 tentative budget to the Board of Supervisors for adoption. And at this time, that will set that expenditure ceiling. As we previously stated, the tentative adoption of the budget puts the expenditure ceiling in place. When we come back for the adoption at the end of June, we cannot amend the budget above what we approved for the expenditure ceiling with the tentative, but we can decrease it. So just so we know what we're adopting on June 2nd. Then after the June 2nd tentative budget adoption, the state budget document and the truth in taxation hearing notices, the TNT notices, as well as the final budget adoption hearing notices will be published in the Daily Sun on June 9th and June 16th. So this will provide public viewing of all of those said documents and the notices that we will be having those hearings. On June 23rd, the board will hold truth and taxation hearings for the Coconino County primary property tax, the Coconino County Library District, the Public Health Services District, and the Flood Control District secondary taxes. Just to give a little bit of background, for the secondary district taxes, we will have to have the truth and taxation hearings due to the fact that we are keeping the rates the same, but due to the increase in the assessed values, the levy amounts are increasing. So that is why we are required to hold these hearings, because the levy amount is increasing. So on June 23rd, following the TNT hearings, the Board of Supervisors will hold a public hearing to adopt the fiscal year 21 final budget. So we will have those, it is required that the TNT hearings are held first, and then we can hold the budget adoption. On August 4th, we will come back to the board and we will bring forth for consideration and adoption the tax rates for all taxing jurisdictions within Coconino County. So those are all of the next steps, and we are available for questions or comments.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan. We appreciate it. Are there any questions or comments from board members about the next steps or in general. Okay, well, I will turn it over to Jimmy in just a minute to close us out, but just want to convey on behalf of the board our thanks to you, Megan, to the entire budget team, to all of the department directors and elected officials for their cooperation, for their participation in our budget cycle here, which is included I think now 10 meetings to review the budget. And obviously it's a different process than we've used in the past. I mean, normally just for the benefit of the public, you probably realize you've seen us in the past where we have about 8 days of budget hearings and elected officials and department heads present detailed information on their budget, and that we did not engage in that this year because we are, as you know, keeping our budget actually quite minimal, and so we've actually also spread it out over a number of meetings, and so we decided that this was going to be the best way to go, to have like an educational process over multiple meetings throughout a series of months. And so I appreciate the fact that it is different this year. As you know, we are experiencing unprecedented times. And so I really appreciate the flexibility of everyone in engaging with us in this different process. And so I'll turn it over to Jimmy Jane, our county manager, for some final comments, but just an extensive amount of work has gone into preparing the budget, and really want to appreciate all of the hours and all of the information that you've provided to the board. Jimmy?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I want to say thank you to you for your leadership and support in this process. That yes is a modified version of our budget discussions, but I think out of this also is opportunity for the future. Say thank you to our elected officials, our department directors, and our team members throughout the county, to our DCMs for their partnership. Say thank you to interim finance director Megan Cunningham, our analyst John Comer and Megan Coons, for their help, especially in their enhanced partnership in working with departments. And that's one of the keys moving forward, is that we will continue these weekly budget conversations, regular reports to the board, but enhanced and continuous conversations with departments moving forward. Want to again welcome Siri Mullaney to the Coconino County team, and look forward to having her start officially on June 1st. The day before the tentative budget adoption, as Megan had mentioned, on June 2nd. However, Siri is and will be deeply involved in these conversations moving forward. Again, just want to stress that this is one point in time, but part of a larger continuum in how we will continue to talk about the budget and what that looks like as we get additional information. While we were on this call this morning, we did get numbers from Megan, and I received our March state shared revenue numbers and our April county sales tax numbers. Basically, those numbers affirmed what we presented yesterday as the tentative numbers, but those numbers did come in, and we'll continue to update you as we receive that information going forward from the Department of Revenue. So, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you again for your partnership, your leadership, and your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jimmy. That then concludes our meeting for today, and have a great week and a great rest of your day. Thank you.